Hey there, I'm Julian and I've prepared a video about the slinking death at the top of the world. Since the first recorded climb to the summit, things have changed dramatically at Mount Everest. In 1953, Sir Edmund Hillary, his Sherpa Tenzing Norgay, and their expedition were the only ones at the mountain. Sherpas belong to a Tibetan ethnic group living in the Himalaya. This tribe grows up and lives in high altitude. Therefore, they are more resistant to the low level of oxygen at Mount Everest. The thin air at the top of the mountain contains only 1/3 of the oxygen air contains at sea level. That is why Sherpas function as carriers for Western expeditions. Today, there are almost 1,000 climbers in over 50 expeditions every year. Customers pay $30,000 to $90,000 to professional operators. Mountain guides then lead almost the worst climbers within 60 days to the summit. On the one hand, such an Everest expedition requires tons of materials and food, but the mountain does not offer good infrastructure. This causes a great deal of environmental problems. On the other hand, there is no guarantee for a successful expedition. In 1996, over 30 mountaineers lost their lives due to treacherous weather during descent. In 2014, 16 Sherpas died while they prepared the route for upcoming expeditions. They were caught unawares by an avalanche in the Khumbu icefall. This is one of the most dangerous parts of Mount Everest's southern route. The Sherpas refused to continue work. In consequence, there was no expedition in 2014. Mass tourism at world's highest peak should be restricted in order to save lives and the environment. Trucks can't reach base camps at Mount Everest. There are no streets. Equipment, materials and food have to be carried by Sherpas and yaks. Therefore, the transport is very expensive, especially the removal. Expeditions often leave their equipment at the mountain, because it is cheaper. Tents get ripped by the wind, and especially empty oxygen bottles remain all over the mountain. Most people who try to summit are not able to climb without additional oxygen. On average, each climber uses 6 of these bottles during an expedition. In total exhaustion, they just litter the empty bottles. This means about 15 tons of metal scrap each season. An unbelievable pollution of a place which had been untouched for a long time. In addition, the mountain is not only polluted with waste. Feces are an even bigger problem. A septic system has not been established yet. There are no toilets at Mount Everest. The alpinists do their business in the snow, only within feet of their tents. Once they step out and walk to another tent, climbers step in excrements. Feces leak into the glacier and contaminate the snow. And things get even worse. Because of freezing temperatures, there is no drinking water at the mountain. Therefore, mountaineers have to melt and drink the soiled snow. Infections disseminate at an unstoppable pace. Serious illnesses at 80,000 meters altitude do not only endanger ascent. Feces at Mount Everest pose a threat to the environment and climbers' lives. Moreover, the highest peak of the world is not designed for a crowd of people. The huge numbers of attempted descents entails risks. Due to weather conditions, time is limited. There are only a few days in spring providing a chance for successful ascent. Temperatures can fall to -70 degrees. Wind can reach a speed of over 320 kilometers per hour. Bodies freeze to death within a few hours. Only continuous movement delays this process and keeps alpinists alive. But there is no highway to the summit. Climbers have to soar in a row. If someone climbs slow, everyone behind has to slow down too. Unfortunately, expeditions lure a great deal of pure mountaineers. This causes massive traffic jams at tricky parts of the route. Customers waste valuable time and oxygen. Supplementary, they risk becoming hypothermic because of stagnation. Their extremities frostbite. Locomotion becomes more and more difficult. It is a vicious circle. Finally, climbers collapse in an area where rescue is impossible.
When he was discovered dying, nobody even knew who he was. He was very much alone.
As many as 40 climbers walked past David Sharp as he lay dying. Concealed in the darkness, most didn't see him. Those who did see him assumed that he was resting or already dead. But David Sharp didn't die that night. Next morning, he was still alive. Now visible in the daylight, the returning climbers began to notice him.
It was a very tragic situation. Climbers coming back from the summit, the coldest night of the season, 11 cases of serious frostbite. That night alone, it was the worst night of the season to be out in the elements. And that's when David Sharp was dying.
The media reacted swiftly to the news that David Sharp was left to die.
David Sharp ran into trouble on the mountain, and he is passed by a number of climbers.
40 other climbers passed by mountaineer David Sharp as he lay dying.
Has commercial mountaineering made climbing a remarkably heartless pursuit?
Criticism all the more stinging since it comes from Sir Edmund Hillary.
The reason David Sharp could not be rescued was because it was physically impossible to do so. He could not walk, and the reality of being at extreme altitude is that everything effectively weighs 4 times as much because you don't have the oxygen in your system to make your muscles work. So to be able to lift a dead body or a nearly dead body is just impossible. There was just no chance of bringing him down at all, no chance.
However, customers and expeditions do not only risk their own lives. Annually, Sherpas die. Those brave men have to do the work nobody else wants to do. They carry the loads for their clients, they prepare the camps, they pave ladders and ropes. They groom the path up to the summit in shoulder-high snow. But they do their work gladly. In Nepalese mythology, Mount Everest is a sanctum. They name the mountain Sakamatha, which means Heavenly King. Therefore, it is an honor for Sherpas to work at Mount Everest. They are willing to risk their lives during labor, and they often lose their lives while they try to save other mountaineers in emergency. For accepting those risks, Sherpa earn about $1,500 per season. This resembles the annual income of Nepalese. Though, compared to the danger and the prices customers pay, it seems like abuse. Nevertheless, the abuse does not discourage Sherpas. Many of them pay the ultimate price and leave a family without any income. Problems at Mount Everest caused by mass tourism have reached immense extent. However, many regional organizations, as well as the Nepalese and Tibetan governments, try to tackle those problems. A Purification Expedition was initialized in 2012. In the same year, the expedition collected over 10 tons of garbage at Mount Everest. In addition, expeditions have to clear their camps completely. Otherwise, they have to pay high fines. Furthermore, each alpinist pays surcharges. They get a bin bag, and if they return a full bin bag, surcharges will be restored. Pollution through feces is also opposed. Expeditions have to provide portable cardboard toilets with polythene bags. These toilets and bags can be swapped and transported easily. However, more provisions are needed to diminish the danger for climbers and Sherpas. If Nepal and China would limit annual climbing permissions, they would effectively avoid traffic jams on the mountain. Since they earn about $10,000 per permission, they are not willing to do so. Therefore, expeditions have to show more responsibility. On the one hand, they should limit the number of customers per expedition. On the other hand, they should only pick experienced and technically adept mountaineers. The death rate would fall dramatically. Inexperienced alpinists would no longer interfere and imperil climbers and Sherpas. Furthermore, an insurance system for Sherpas should be installed. Many of them die, leaving their family without any income. An organization has been established to support those families. But this organization alone is not able to solve problems and desperately looks for assistance. Unless there is no engagement, expeditions reject these measures to do less profit. The circumstances will not change. The situation at world's highest peak is very precarious, but environmental problems have been tackled successfully, at least in the last few years. Due to sustainable thinking, pollution decreases. This is very important since contamination at Mount Everest also affects surrounding areas. The impurities remain in the glacier ice. Thence the glacier moves inland, and with it all the garbage and feces. Cleaning Mount Everest is therefore of particular importance. However, fatalities at Mount Everest are an even more dramatic problem. Improvement is out of sight. On the contrary, death rates increase year by year. Limits are stipulated by expert climbers, but states and expeditions reject limits. They refer to the civil rights and liberties. Everybody has a right to go wherever he wants to go. In fact, states as well as expeditions just fear to make less profit. Of course, everybody should be able to make use of his own liberties. Nevertheless, before 1990, only the most skillful mountaineers even thought of climbing Mount Everest. It was just not possible for inexperienced alpinists. Today, operators advertise to bring everybody up to the summit who is physically halfway fit. They afford even people who never climbed before the possibility to climb at world's highest peak. The tempting offer and the mountain itself prevail over prudence.
This scene at Mount Everest. Each of those lights in the distance there, a climber. 4 have died, their deaths being blamed on a sort of traffic jam. And ABC's Ron Claiborne tonight on why so many are trying to get to the top right now.
These are images from high up on Everest. The path to the peak clogged with climbers, as many as 200, gambling with their very lives. In this time-lapse video, you can see the headlamps of the climbers nearing the 29,000-foot peak.
Looking up the Black Mountain, you can see at least 100 pinpricks of light, all in a vertical line going straight into the stars.
The logjam has been caused by so many people rushing to get to the top on the last weekend of the climbing season. But the going is slow, and the oxygen runs out quickly as they pass through the notorious death zone of thin air and sub-zero temperature.
Over 400 deaths in the last 20 years show that it is not that simple. But as long as states and expeditions show no responsibility, the situation will not change. Mass tourism at Mount Everest will claim lives of more people.